written words, but the characteristics of the personalities that human beings put onto animals is pretty universal around the world.
And I think as the world has shifted in terms of the more money is coming from international and domestic, we spend a lot more time talking about the ideas in the film and saying, is that something that we just think is funny? Will it actually work? Especially if it's integral to the story. And a great example of that is the sloth scene, where we thought to ourselves, it seems like such a great scene, but will it actually work in other countries? And we did do some testing out there to make sure that idea was going to translate, because it's so integral to the film. To have that kind of a scene sit in your film and not have it work everywhere is too risky. If it's a pun, it's going to go by quickly, and they're going to do their best to figure out how to make it funny for the country, that you can slide by. But when a scene is that integral to what this movie is and juicy, you need it to work everywhere. So you do some testing to make sure the concept of bureaucracy and administration.
The good news is frustration with bureaucracy is universal.
It is. You should go to the offices around here, the Vortex. Speaking of which, do we have another question? Front Da hinten auch noch jemand so? Habt ihr da noch eine Frage irgendwie? Also nicht, ob jemand die Parkgebühr bezahlt, aber... Da dann, okay. Siehst du, da hast du schon, okay. Hi.
I was just curious, with the huge differences of scales, were there any things that you had to think about, like with the camera work, things to make that work?
Our head of layout, who composes every shot, would call it a nightmare. Because we decided early on that instead of doing what they normally do in these types of films, and I didn't even realize it, that's how dumb I am, that's how tricky the trick is that they will scale up mice or small animals and scale down the big ones and create kind of a generic lineup, a generic scale of the animals, so they are easy to get into the frame, but we wanted this to be different. We wanted it to be unlike any of those other movies. So we said we're really going to celebrate the scale difference of animals in the wild. So we really stuck to that, especially at points where it would have been easy to kind of fall back to the old trick.
Oh yeah, and John last year was really good because I think he knew early on that scale thing would be so funny, and that train shot you see in the beginning of the film where Judy's on the station platform with her folks was John pushing us to really show early on the scale thing, and people get a huge kick out of that, the big, medium, small, and if you look for it all throughout the movie, we don't always call attention to it, but it's there. There are small doors and little passageways and things, and it's because the city was actually designed by a German guy, Matthias Lechner, who's an amazing guy, an amazing designer. Yes, he's amazing. The amazing thing about that is that Matthias made sure it all worked. It's all, and Hans, what's Hans' last name? Hans Keim is another German, who helped to build it all. German design, precision. But the city actually works. Like if you look even at the layout of the city from the air, Thundertown, the cold weather area, is right next to Sahara Square, the hot weather area, and there's a huge air conditioning and heating wall. But we talked to air conditioning experts, and they said if you had enough money and enough determination,
and if you were just crazy
enough, and if you're animals, you could make this work. And so it actually all works. And when Thundertown melts, the runoff from Thundertown fuels the steam cannons that you saw that make the rainforest. So it's all this huge clockwork biodome thing that they created. So
Designed by German?
Designed by Germans.
See, we not only invent, we also design.
That's a little racist.
Okay. Is it?
Yeah, come on.
Look who's talking.
Have you learned nothing from this movie?
Sorry.
I think you need to watch it again.
Sorry.
Let's roll it.
Yeah, sorry. So, da drüben bitte.
Coming back to this creative process, I have a question for this really lovable Marlon Brando's Mr. Big. Who invented this really funny, brilliant person?
Oh, the voice?
The voice of Mr. Big?
No,
Oh,
the idea, the whole
Oh,
idea.
the whole idea.
The whole idea. You know, I don't know. There was
Well, it came from early on. We were just kind of pitching jokes about what would be some funny characters, that Judy could run afoul of, coming out of kind of the crime genre or detective genre, and was it Jim Reardon?
Maybe Jim
Our
Reardon.
head story is a
Probably
very
Christina.
funny guy named Jim Reardon. And we were always looking for duality in the characters. And he said, well, what if we have, like a mob boss that everyone's afraid of, and they call him Mr. Big, and it turns out to be a little tiny shrew, And then from there, it got into this conversation of, well, what if it looked like Vito Corleone, and what if it sounded just like Marlon Brando, but kind of sped up with like the mice and Cinderella,
Oh,
and we're like, oh,
we started
that's
cracking up.
pretty good.
This is a funny thing about the voice of that guy. So that's Maurice LaMarche. She worked with Rich on The Simpsons for many years. He's a very, very talented voice artist. So when we recorded Maurice doing this voice, we noticed that we didn't get the right sound unless he sat a very particular way. So Maurice is a little chubby, and so he had to kind of sit like this,
provide a chair for him.
kind of do like that. So he had to talk like this to get the right sound. Because if he did it standing up, it sounded like Robert De Niro. It didn't work. So he had to sit down and kind of do this. And we had to get him in a very specific.
We had to throw in entire sessions worth of recording because we didn't have a chair in the room. And we were wondering, what's wrong? Why does this sound different? There was no chair. There was no chair in the room.